The hallway was loud with slamming lockers and laughter that echoed too sharply off the tile walls. Freshman year always had a scent, something between pencil shavings and fear. Evan moved through it like a shadow. His shoes barely made a sound. His shoulders curled inward. One hand gripped the strap of his backpack. The other clutched the spine of a worn notebook like it might slip away. He kept his gaze down, not from shyness, but survival. Don't be seen. Don't be noticed. Don't give them a reason. That was the mantra that pulsed behind his quiet eyes. A group of boys loitered by the lockers near room 104. One noticed him, nudged the other. "Hey, it's the mute kid," one of them muttered, loud enough to sting. "Why doesn't he talk? I heard he doesn't know how." Creepy. They laughed, not viciously, just easily, like it cost them nothing. Evan walked past like he hadn't heard, but he had. He always did. Inside, every word scraped something raw. He slipped into English class and headed straight for the last desk by the window. The same seat he'd pick every day for the next 4 years. The safe one. The quiet corner. The one where teachers forgot to call on you and kids forgot you were even there. The bell rang. A girl named Brianna leaned over to whisper to her friend. "I heard he's, like, homeschooled or something. Barely speaks." "No, I think it's, like, a condition. Like, dumb." More giggles. Evan stared down at the lined paper on his desk, blinking slowly. One word sat in the center of the page. Breathe. He didn't want to talk. Not because he couldn't. Not because he didn't have things to say. But because every time he had, people made it worse. Years of it. Starting in kindergarten. His mouth would open. A word would catch. A stutter. A stall. And that's all it took for the world to decide who he was. So he stopped offering pieces of himself. Better to be invisible than broken in the open. Mrs. Keller, the English teacher, smiled at the class. "I'd love to get to know you all," she said. "Let's go around and say one fun fact about ourselves. I'll start." Evan froze. His palms began to sweat. The circle was moving clockwise. 6 students away, then 5, then 4. He stared at the clock. He could feel his chest tightening. 3, 2. The boy beside him said something about playing Fortnite for 8 hours straight. Laughter. Then it was Evan. Silence. The room tilted just slightly. Mrs. Keller's smile strained. "Evan?" He opened his mouth. No sound. 1 second. 2. I like. The girl across the aisle smirked. The boy behind him whispered, "Oh." Evan stopped. Mrs. Keller cleared her throat. "That's okay, Evan. Thank you. We'll move on." But no one had heard anything. And somehow, that was worse than saying something wrong. Evan's face burned. He turned his eyes to the window, pretending to watch the wind in the trees. But inside, his thoughts were loud. Why do I even try? The bell rang. Backpack sipped. Desk scraped. Evan stood, slid his notebook into his bag, and left the room without a word. He passed through the hall like fog, unnoticed, unclaimed, and already building the shell he'd live inside for 4 long years. Lunch period at Westmont High was less a break and more a battlefield, especially if you walked in alone. Evan did. Every day. He stood in line like everyone else, but he didn't laugh, didn't chat, didn't scroll through his phone pretending to be busy. He just stood still, waiting. A tray slid into his hands. A carton of milk. A sandwich. A too-ripe banana. He walked the perimeter of the cafeteria, eyes scanning for a seat like a soldier scanning for landmines. Every table was filled, not with people, but with eyes. And those eyes carried judgment. At one table, a jock nudged his friend. Mute boy incoming. They both grinned. At another, A girl whispered too loudly. Is he, like, allergic to people or something? Evan said nothing. He chose a corner, a half-cracked table near the vending machines. Close enough to be in the room, far enough to be forgettable. He set his tray down, unzipped his backpack, and pulled out his notebook. The red one, pages full of words he'd never say out loud. The bell hadn't even stopped echoing when the first hit came. Splash. Cold milk. Right across the notebook. Evan jerked back. A gasp caught in his throat, but never made it out. He looked up. 2 boys stood nearby, one still holding the empty carton. Oops, one smirked. Didn't see you there. Laughter. Evan didn't move. He didn't wipe the page. He didn't defend himself. He just stared. At the puddle. At the soaked ink. Watching his own voice vanish into paper pulp. Then a hand. One of the boys shoved his tray, flipping it onto the floor. The sandwich split open. Banana rolled. A teacher watched from across the room. Did nothing. Evan bent down, picked up the pieces. The bell rang. The cafeteria emptied like a prison break. Noise, motion, chaos. And Evan stood in the middle of it, a ghost with wet sleeves and a stained notebook. The hallway after lunch wasn't much better. He walked with his head low, hugging his books like a shield. Lockers slammed too close. Elbows accidentally brushed his shoulder. A senior shoved past him, muttering, "Why don't you ever say anything, freak?" Evan didn't respond. Not because he didn't want to, but because the last time he did, his stutter had caught, and the memory still burned. By 7th period, the school day felt like a mountain. Each class another step in worn-out shoes. Each bell, a reminder that he hadn't been seen. Not really. In math, he knew the answers. Always did. But his hand never went up. His voice, like chalk dust, always there. Never felt. Miss Park called on someone else. Evan stared at the numbers in front of him. Clean. Predictable. Safe. Math didn't laugh when you stumbled. Equations didn't care about your voice. They just wanted to be solved. At dismissal, students poured out like waves. Evan waited until they thinned, until the noise softened, until no one was watching. He walked alone toward the buses, past the field, past the noise, toward the bench under the maple tree. He opened his notebook, the red one still damp, but not destroyed. On a clean page, he wrote, "They don't know me, but I still see them. Every laugh, every eye roll, every teacher who turns away. Maybe silence is a cage, or maybe it's armor." He looked up. A gust of wind rustled the branches. He pulled his head tighter and waited for tomorrow. The hallway lights flickered as Evan stepped through the front door. No shouting, no chaos. Just soft piano music from the old Bluetooth speaker in the kitchen and the faint whir of wheels turning against tile. "Mia," he called gently. The sound stopped. A second later, she appeared, pushed by their mom, who smiled tiredly before stepping away, giving them space. Mia, 11, sat bundled in a fleece blanket, her legs tucked under, her head tilted slightly to the right. Her gaze was sharp, though, alert, always watching. Her arms didn't move, but her eyes did everything. Evan knelt in front of her. "I brought something," he said softly. She blinked once. Their code for yes. He pulled the red notebook from his backpack, the one with warped pages from spilled milk. Ink bled through the cover, but it was intact. He opened to a fresh page, took a breath, and began to read. "Today wasn't great, but you already knew that, didn't you? The world's loud, Mia. Too loud, but here with you. I can hear myself again." He looked up. Her lashes fluttered. He could swear she was smiling. The notebook held everything he couldn't say at school. His voice, his fears, his anger, his hope. Each night, he gave that voice to Mia because she couldn't speak. And he could, even if it came out slow, fractured, imperfect. He flipped the page. The next poem was one she liked. If I had a microphone, I'd give it to you first, because even without words, you've taught me more than any teacher. A soft exhale escaped her lips. Her body tilted slightly, her way of reaching for him. He leaned in and hugged her. It was the only place he didn't flinch. Later that night, Evan sat on the floor beside her bed. Mia had fallen asleep, her fingers curled near her face. Peaceful, he stayed a moment longer, notebook open on his knees, pen in hand. He wrote by the dim glow of the night light. I hide everything I am, but she sees it. She always sees it. He glanced up at her once more, then carefully closed the notebook, sliding it under the loose floorboard beneath his bed, its usual hiding place. He didn't care if the world laughed at him, or ignored him, or shoved him in hallways, because in this room, he was known, and one day, maybe his words would matter, even beyond these four walls. It was the kind of Thursday that slipped past unnoticed. Muted skies, bell shrieks, locker clangs. Evan drifted through the school day like he always did, close to the edges, careful not to make ripples. He was on his way to the library when a voice stopped him. Evan. Mrs. Bell stood at her office door, calm, warm, a soft scarf wrapped around her neck. Her presence was quiet, like she understood silence better than most. He froze, his shoulders tensed. Can I see you for a second? His pulse kicked. Was this about the cafeteria or his grades? But when he stepped in, she didn't scold or probe. Instead, she gestured to the chair across from her desk. He sat. She didn't ask him anything at first, just placed a single sheet of paper between them. He looked down. Graduation speaker nomination form. His eyes widened. He looked up at her, confused. She smiled, just a little. The staff can nominate someone too. He blinked. His fingers curled around the strap of his backpack. I know you don't speak much, she said gently, but maybe that's exactly why you should. A lump formed in his throat. His mouth opened, but words didn't come. They never came when the moment pressed too hard. So she just nodded and slid the form closer. Take it. Just think about it. Evan took the paper. He didn't say thank you, but she understood. Sometimes silence was gratitude. That night, the sky outside his window pulsed with soft lightning, distant, harmless. He sat on the edge of his bed, the form unfolded beside him. The line for the nominee's name still blank. His red notebook lay open on his lap. Fresh page. He picked up his pen and wrote, slowly, carefully. If I could speak, what would I say? The pen hovered. He looked around the room. The peeling poster of Saturn, his chipped bookshelf, Mia's drawing taped to his wall, a stick figure boy holding a mic, smiling. Would I tell them how silence isn't weakness? That it's survival? That every time they laughed, I heard it louder than they meant it? That I am more than the pauses between words? He stopped. He closed his eyes, the ink still wet under his fingertips. And for the first time, he imagined standing there, on a stage, not disappearing, not trembling, but speaking, even if the words caught, even if his voice cracked. He saw Mia in the front row, clapping, and that image, that one, burned brighter than the fear. He looked back at the nomination form, and slowly, he picked up the pen. The gym buzzed with summer heat and last week restlessness. Rows of students slouched in folding chairs. Gowns and tassels were still weeks away, but today's assembly marked the start of the countdown. The energy was loud, loose, ready to escape. Evan sat near the back, as always, hoodie sleeves pulled over his hands. head lowered. He was used to tuning things out, the laughter, the noise, the careless words tossed around like paper balls. He didn't expect today to be any different. Principal Harris cleared his throat at the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, seniors, each year we honor one voice, one student chosen to speak for the class. This year's valedictorian speaker will be. He adjusted his glasses. A pause. Evan Thomas. The microphone squeaked. For half a second, the room froze, like it didn't register. Then, laughter. Some forced, some stunned, some just confused. Did he say Evan? No way. Is that the quiet kid? Bro, he's mute. Evan's ears rang. Heat surged up his neck. He didn't move, not even to breathe. He could feel it, the slow turn of heads. Curious, mocking, the burn of eyes on him like a stage spotlight he never asked for. A boy in the front row leaned to his friend. This'll be good. Maybe he'll mime it. More chuckles. A few sympathetic glances. One teacher frowned. But then from the third row on the left, Mrs. Bell sat with her hands folded gently in her lap. She didn't look shocked, or amused, or even worried. She smiled. Not big, not showy, just real. Evan caught it. That flicker of belief, like a hand reaching across a crowded room saying, "Stand." He looked back down at his notebook, the corner of it peeking from his backpack. The words he had started scribbling the night before rushed back into him like wine through a cracked window. If I could speak, what would I say? He hadn't said yes. Not aloud. But he hadn't said no either. The laughter faded. The assembly moved on. But inside Evan, something shifted. He was no longer invisible. And in some strange, terrifying, impossible way, he had just become the voice of the class. The bedroom was dim, painted in the soft amber of an old lamp. Shadows curled along the edges of the furniture. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet Evan knew too well. He stood in front of the mirror, barefoot on the carpet, clutching his red notebook like it might vanish. The speech was in there. Every word, every pause, every scar dressed in syllables. He opened it, hands trembling. Good evening. My name is Evan Thomas. I wasn't supposed to be standing here. His lips parted. He tried to speak. Goo. The word cracked. Go good ye. He stopped. The sound in his throat felt foreign, like trying to lift something too heavy with muscles too soft. He looked into the mirror. His eyes stared back, wide, uncertain, begging. Then the memories came. Fast, sharp, flash. He was 10, sitting in the front row. A teacher kneeled beside him after class. Evan, you have to use your voice. No one will wait forever. The woman's perfume was strong. Her patience was short. He remembered the heat of her disappointment more than her words. Flash. He was 13. Locker slammed shut beside him. A voice in his ear, hissing. Your sister's a freak too. What do you two do? Just not talk and hope we forget you exist. He remembered that laugh. Cruel. Loud. That day, he didn't go to lunch. Or the next day. Or the one after that. Back in the mirror, Evan's breath shook. He slammed the notebook shut. Tears prickled, uninvited. He wiped them fast to hard. This is stupid, he muttered. Voice flat, cracking. He turned to the trash can. Paused. Stared. Notebook halfway in his hand. He saw himself, 6 years old, sitting beside Mia in her hospital bed, holding her fingers while she spelled words on her little board. She couldn't speak at all, but she never stopped finding ways to be heard. Never. He clutched the notebook tighter, turned back to the mirror, opened to page 1, took a breath. Good evening. It was shaky. It was broken, but it was his, and he wasn't throwing it away. Not tonight. The house was hushed under the weight of night, the kind of quiet that creaked with every floorboard, breathed with every passing car outside the window. Evan sat on the edge of his bed, head bowed, red notebook unopened in his lap. The speech was finished. Words carved from pain, lined in ink and fear. But now, it just stared back at him like a dare. He traced his thumb across the front cover, thinking about the stage. The lights, the eyes. The voices in his head were louder than any audience could be. He won't even make it through a sentence. Waste of a mic. Why would they choose him? He flinched. Then a soft knock. Click. The door cracked open. Mia's wheelchair rolled slowly across the carpet. She didn't speak. She never did. Not with words. Not since she was 5. But her eyes, always her eyes, were louder than most people's voices. She rolled to a stop beside him, glanced down at the red notebook in his hands. Then, without hesitation, she reached out. Her fingers, small and steady, tapped once on the cover. Then she pointed at him. Not the notebook. Him. Evan froze. Tears threatened, uninvited. She did it again. Firm. One tap. One point. Not to pressure. Not to push. Just to tell him. You can. He met her gaze. For the first time in days, he let the silence breathe between them. And in it, he heard everything she was saying. She didn't need perfect. She didn't need polished. She didn't need powerful. She needed honest. So did he. Evan exhaled slowly. Tears slipped silently down his cheeks. He didn't wipe them away this time. Instead, he opened the notebook. Mia leaned closer. He read the first line aloud. Go, good evening. His voice trembled, but Mia smiled. He continued, slower. This is hard. For me. BB, but I. He stopped. Her hand squeezed his arm. Evan looked up. A lump caught in his throat. She's not asking for perfect, he whispered, almost to himself. She nodded. Once. Deliberate. And suddenly, that stage didn't feel like a cliff anymore. It felt like a bridge. And one person was already waiting for him on the other side. The gym was packed. Caps and gowns. Rows of folding chairs. Proud parents with shaky hands on smartphones. Seniors buzzing with excitement. Tassels glinting under the stage lights. But Evan couldn't hear any of it. His name had just been called. His legs barely moved. Each step toward the podium felt like walking through deep water. His breath came in fragments. His throat tightened, but his fingers gripped the red notebook, edges worn from nights of fear and rewriting. He reached the mic, stared at it, then at the crowd. Eyes. So many eyes. Phones raised. He could see the smirk of one boy in the back. A girl nudging her friend. A whisper. He can't even talk. What's he doing up there? He exhaled, shoulders trembling. The gym quieted. Even the rustle of the paper as he opened the notebook felt loud in the stillness. He lifted his head, just barely. The lights blinded. He couldn't see faces now. Just shapes. Just silence. And then, his voice. G, good evening. It cracked, but it rang. The sound echoed across the mic like a match strike in the dark. A murmur moved through the room. He swallowed, closed his eyes, opened them again. His hands steadied, just slightly. My name is Evan Thomas. He paused. Every student leaned forward, and he kept going. I can know some of why you don't can know me. Or maybe you'd do. As the kid who never talked, a soft ripple of recognition. He turned a page. I didn't speak, because the W, world T, taught me early that some voices get laughed at. He scanned the room. slowly, and S. Sometimes silence feels safer. Phones lowered, arms dropped. Not a whisper now, but silence is also a cage. His voice broke there, raw, but he didn't stop. Didn't want to be quiet. I was scared of your jokes, of messing up, of being that stutter. A pause. No one moved. A single cough from the back. Then stillness again. But I learned that you can break without making a sound. He looked up, finally. Eyes no longer low. But you can heal out loud. Someone gasped. He closed the notebook. Silence. Then the sound of a single clap. Then two. Then the room erupted. Not with screams, not with cheers, but with something deeper. Respect. The applause wasn't loud, it was reverent. A teacher wiped her eyes. A student stood, then another, until the entire room was on their feet. And Evan? He stood taller than he'd ever felt. The room held its breath. Evan stood behind the podium, small in frame, but standing taller than he ever had. His red notebook trembled slightly in his hands, but he didn't open it this time. He looked up. He looked out. And for the first time, he saw them all and they saw him. I was called. He began, his voice low, rough around the edges, but certain. Weak, weird, invisible. He let the words land. They echoed. He didn't flinch. I used to believe them, he said, more clearly now, because they said it with laughter, and the world clapped along. A murmur stirred. A few students shifted in their chairs. Some winced, not because it was harsh, but because it was true. But silence, Evan said, stepping out from behind the podium now. Voice rising just enough doesn't mean emptiness. He looked directly at a row of students near the back. One of them had once knocked his tray to the floor. Another had stuffed paper in his locker. Both now stared back, blank, pale. I was listening, Evan said, softer now. I was watching, and I was waiting. The pause was heavy, controlled. For the moment, I could speak for myself. His hands opened at his sides, and for others like me, gasps, small ones, a cough, then nothing. He scanned the crowd. I saw the boy in the library who always sat alone with a chessboard and no one to play with. The girl who brought the same lunch every day and shared half with someone else. The janitor who picked up your messes without thanks. The teacher who still smiles even when no one listens. Eyes welled across the gym. Not everyone, but enough. I saw you, Evan said, emotion threading through the calm. The real you. Not the one in the photos. Not the one on the team. The version of you that showed up even when no one cheered. He breathed in sharp and deep. You mattered. You still do. From the bleachers, the principal leaned forward, elbows on knees, jaw slack. I used to think my silence meant I didn't belong. He looked at Mia, who sat near the front in her wheelchair, her hand curled over her heart, her eyes brimming. But now I know. His voice dropped to a whisper. It meant I was saving something. One final breath. Sometimes, the quietest voice is just the one that waited the longest to speak. He stepped back. No music. No cue. Just silence. Then someone stood. Then another. A ripple. A surge. The auditorium rose to its feet, not out of habit, not because they were told, but because they felt it. Even the ones who once mocked him. Some clapped. Some wiped their eyes. A few just stood too stunned to move, too moved to speak. Evan didn't smile. He breathed, and in that breath, he felt free. For a moment, the gym was still. No sound, no whisper, no cough. Even the air seemed to hesitate. Evan stood motionless at the podium, chest rising and falling, his red notebook clutched against his side like a lifeline. The final words of his speech still echoed in the wood and wires of the microphone. Sometimes, the quietest voice is just the one that waited the longest to speak. Then, clap. A single pair of hands. From the front row. Mia. Her palms met gently, rhythmically, not with pity, but reverence. Another clap followed, from somewhere near the faculty section. Then another, and another, like raindrops before a storm. And then it broke. The entire auditorium rose. A full standing ovation. And not the kind that comes from obligation, the kind that crashes like a wave of recognition, of guilt, of awe. A boy in the second row pressed his lips together, eyes glassy. One of the athletes, the one who used to mutter mute under his breath when Evan walked past, now clapped with trembling hands, his gaze fixed on the floor. A girl near the back, popular, always loud, covered her mouth. Her mascara ran. Mia stood now, her eyes locked on Evan, nodding once. Her hands didn't stop moving. She clapped as if trying to say everything she couldn't put into words. And Mrs. Bell, the counselor who had handed him that blank nomination form weeks ago, sat in the shadows of the stage wings. Her cheeks were wet. Her hand gripped the chair's armrest like it held the moment still. Evan didn't cry. Not because he didn't want to, but because, for the first time, he didn't feel the need to break. He felt whole. The noise around him wasn't noise at all. It was acceptance. It was understanding. It was all the words he had swallowed over the years, spoken back to him now, in claps and cheers and silent nods. The sound surrounded him, lifted him, wrapped around the parts of him that had been bruised by laughter and buried by silence. He stepped back from the mic, then bowed, just slightly. And as he straightened up, he caught his reflection in the metal rim of the podium. For the first time, he saw not the boy who didn't speak, but the boy who had waited, who had withstood, who had finally been heard. The auditorium was still ringing, not with applause now that had faded, not with whispers, those had hushed, but with something deeper, a silence full of something sacred. Evan stepped down from the stage. Slowly, his legs were steady, but his heart felt too full to hold upright. The crowd parted like water. He didn't rush. Each step felt like walking through a different lifetime. The boy who had sat alone at lunch. The boy who had written more than he ever spoke. The boy who had mastered the art of disappearing. All of them were behind him now. As he reached the aisle, Mia was waiting, her eyes red-rimmed, her lips trembling at the edge of a smile. She didn't say anything, she just took his hand, squeezed it once. No sound, but the message was deafening. Mrs. Bell stood a few feet away, arms folded over her chest, but her posture had softened. Her eyes followed Evan like she was watching history happen. And above it all, the camera panned wide. Rows of students still standing. Some stunned, some inspired, all changed. The school banner above the stage hung perfectly still. And over it all, the final voiceover began. Not booming, not proud, just honest. Evan's voice. Soft, clear, whole. Some voices don't echo in volume. Cut to black and white flashes. Evan sitting on a bench, drawing in his notebook. Evan wiping milk off his backpack. Evan watching the world from behind thick glasses and closed lips. They echo in truth. Then color returned, that same boy now standing tall. A microphone before him. A crowd behind him. A future in front. And sometimes, the ones who speak last. Flash to students leaning forward. Tears caught in lashes. Teachers leaning back in quiet awe. Say what we all needed to hear first. The final shot, Evan walking out of the auditorium doors. Into sunlight. A breeze catches the edge of his red notebook, still in his hand. He doesn't look back. He doesn't need to. His words were already echoing